Hello, sorry for all that, guys. We are just connecting again. Hopefully, it will work. Hello, she's here, guys. Hello, hello. We are all ready. We're gonna bring her in and we're gonna start. There we are.
Woohoo!
Hello.
Well, we got there in the end.
Yes, we did. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine. I want you to kind of introduce yourself before I ask you questions.
Sure. So my name's Zoe Thomas. I live in London, and I've got a mental health page that I set up after I was released from a psychiatric ward. I was admitted due to my PTSD and also my suicidal ideations. I was in hospital for 10 months, which was obviously a very long time. And
Mm-hmm.
part of the reason I set up my company and my page was because honestly, very few people understand mental health. I was the
Yes.
last person anyone expected to be in hospital. Like I was doing my law degree, I had a lot going for me externally, but internally,
Oh,
I was completely broken, but nobody was aware. To be honest, I wasn't aware of it either. It was only once I ended up
okay.
in hospital that I realized, okay, like I'm actually unwell. So yeah, so now my journey is all about sharing about my journey, using words like suicide, using words like self-harm so that it's not
Mm-hmm.
such a stigmatized word.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
So tell me, how did it all begin and where are you with all that right now?
So right now, I got discharged from hospital in July last year. So we're coming up to almost a year. Um,
Okay.
I'm super grateful, like I've not gone back to hospital. I think there was a concern that because I'd been in hospital so long that I'd become a revolving door patient. Just so you get,
Oh,
I mean, the theory is you get used to being in hospital, so you kind of want to go back. But I was
oh my
never
God.
psychotic. I always
Okay.
had capacity. So
Mm-hmm.
I think their concern was, is this person going to be institutionalized? My response was, no way. Like, there's no way I was going to work that hard during those 10 months to get better um, and then go back to hospital. Having said that, it's been the biggest struggle the last sort of, well, since coming out of hospital, because you realize, especially here in the UK, we kind of portray this image that we're so advanced in terms of healthcare and mental health, but you actually see we're still applauding things that were done 20 years ago. There's been no current change, no current understanding. A lot of therapists learn from books, but the thing is we are not books, we're individuals with individual traumas, and that kind of goes unnoticed. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm fortunate enough that I've got an amazing therapist, and we've been working really, really hard, the last 9 months, to kind of try and get me better.
Okay.
Mm.
Great, great. Uh, how do you feel with all that you went through and end up at the psychic? What actually happened that led you to being hospitalized and all that?
So what happened was I think, do you know what? There was nothing that really happened in that moment. There was
Okay.
months of me just being super unhappy. And I remember people saying to me, why aren't you happy? I had someone paying my uni fees. I won a bursary at uni. I'd spoken in front of like royals, celebrities. Prince Charles invited me to his house, and people were still like, "Why are you not like? What's going on?" And even me, I
Right.
remember standing in Clarence House, which is Prince Charles's house, and I remember doing this speech, and afterwards thinking something's not right with me. Why am I unhappy? And that's when I realized, I'm unhappy. So I remember one day I went to uni, and I mean, honestly, like it's a crazy story, but I decided for days earlier that this was the day that I was going to commit suicide. I was so convinced. I'd planned everything. I'd wrote my letters and emails. I was so ready. The morning of, well, the day that I,
Okay.
you know, planned to commit suicide, I bumped into my lecturer, sorry, my personal advisor. So when you're at university, you've got one member of staff who's allocated to look after you. And she just noticed that something was wrong because normally I'm, loud, bubbly, confident, but I was really quiet that morning. So honestly, it was just by chance that she called me into her office. I mean, it didn't go great. She called me into her office. I ran out the office. She chased me down the office. It was a
Okay.
lot of drama. And
Okay.
then eventually, she managed to calm me down. And she took me to the therapy section. And when we got to the therapy rooms, they said straight away, "You're not going anywhere. We're going to admit you to hospital." And I was like, "No way." So I remember
Oh,
just sitting there thinking, like, if I scream and shout, I'm going to look crazy. If I just keep my mouth shut, then it'll be okay. So then, I ended up taking me to hospital, and we got to A&E, accident and emergency. And again, I was convinced that they're going to send me home because I was quite good at pretending I was okay. Um, but I think they could see through all of that, even though I was convinced my line was working. And they just
okay.
just said, asked me questions, could not remember what I'd said. And she just said, "Well, thank you for all of that. We're now going to admit you to a psychiatric unit." And I was like, "What? Like, where? Like me? Like I'm a normal person. I go to uni. I'm very
Right.
functioning. Like I do not belong there." But there was no getting out. Thankfully, my family was with me at the time, so they were able to calm me down. And then, yeah, I just spent the next 3 nights in A&E because there was no rooms available on the psychiatric unit. Then the third night, about 3 a.m., they wake me up and say, "The room's ready." And I was like, "Well, yay." I really don't care. So then they
Mm.
transported me over to the bill. I mean, it was like a 10-minute walk from the main department. And I got to the psychiatric unit, and it was 3 in the morning when I arrived. So I just remember thinking, I'm too scared. I mean, I'm too tired to feel scared. So just whatever. Then when I woke up in the morning, I was like, shit, I'm on a psychiatric unit. Like, am I going to get killed? Are they going to be straight jackets? Are they padded walls? There were all these questions. And I remember walking out my room and somebody was like, "Breakfast." And I was like, I don't give a shit. I'm not going for breakfast. I'm staying in my room. But obviously, I went out for breakfast, and it wasn't as scary as I thought. It was just, it's not like the movies. It's just, a
Okay.
unit, and there's people who are talking to themselves, and most of them were just like seemed normal, not like super unwell. But I realized I was in the sort of entry level um kind of mental health. The people that are really, really, really unwell, they go to what we call PQ, which stands for
Okay.
psychiatric intensive care. So thankfully, I wasn't there. And that's where, over my 10 months being there, you'd hear all sorts of stories about psychiatric units. People will hit you for no reason. They were screaming, shouting. But what I didn't realize was on the ground, I was on the first floor. On the ground floor, funnily enough, we had PQ for men. So the most unwell men were like literally on the ground floor. And I remember some nights you could just hear them. You could hear them like screaming and shouting, and it was pretty intimidating at first. But like I said, come month 6, 7, it was just like normal to me. I was, oh, there he goes, there that person goes. But initially, it was very, very kind of shocking. Number one, to believe I was on a psychiatric ward, and number two, to be surrounded with people who were psychotic. Because remember, I was depressed, I was suicidal, I was getting flashbacks, but I was not psychotic. I mean, I wasn't psychotic, so I was there mentally all the time. Whereas when people
Mm,
have psychosis, when they have their episodes,
mm, right.
so it was really stressful at first, but over time it became almost like you got used to it. You got used to patients coming in and out. Um, but yeah, it was just it was an experience to say the least.
I'm sure it was. Hearing it is experience for me. I'm sure where you were in it, it must have been more of that.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
people with underlying conditions like anxiety and because I've suffered from anxiety after I lost baby daughter. I was perfectly fine before that, and uh, she died after she was born. Like she stayed for 6 and she passed away, and I was fine after
Oh, sorry about that.
that. I had it here till I started working, but I got out of it. And but then I had my son, and then my anxiety went up the ladder, and I was like, oh, nobody can touch him. Oh, somebody's touched him. So I want to ask you, can anxiety lead to depression or vice versa? Or, I mean,
I
what's
think the
your take?
problem, yeah, I think for me, I think anxiety can lead, I think depression causes anxiety in the first place. I think
Okay.
people like we humans, we find it easier to, stay busy. We want to be on our phones. We want to do something because we don't want to sit alone with ourselves.
Mm,
And I think if you think about why that is, it's because in all of us, whether there was a small trauma or something extremely traumatic, we are constantly running from ourselves. So I think anxiety and depression are hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. When you're anxious, you're overly panicked, your heart's beating, you're sweating, you're just scared. And depression is like you're sad. So
right.
when you're not sad, you're scared. When you're not scared, you're sad. So I think the two definitely come hand in
Well,
hand. Um, but I also think that the problem is when we have anxiety or when we have, something to do with depression, we don't talk about it because we think, do you know what? Like, I'm not suffering as much as the person who's screaming down the street or
mm,
that man that I saw at the bus stop who was talking to himself. We kind of think mental health is just about people who are suffering externally. But in my experience and what I'm learning is the majority of the world is suffering internally, but they refuse to see it as a mental health issue. And that for me is really upsetting because, if I broke my leg now, everybody would be compassionate. If I got the cold or the flu, everybody would be compassionate. I mean, look at coronavirus. Everyone's compassionate, they're caring for each other. But when it's your brain that gets sick, it's almost like people think, oh my God, I don't know what to do. But it's like, come on, like the brain is still a part of the body. It's still like, it's near my eyes, it's near my nose. It's not this scary muscle that's nowhere to be found. It's there. And sometimes that can get stressed out. And it's not the end of the world. It's not attention seeking. It's not being lazy. It's saying I'm struggling. But it's hard to say I'm struggling when we live in a society where we're told, get over it, grow up, hurry up and get better. So that's my view
I,
on it.
the words that you're using, I thought that kind of words were only used at my side of the world, but hearing it that everywhere it's the same thing, like get better and you're fine and get over yourself. It's just sad. Now you hear so much about it, and every other person has it, but yet I see no compassion or anybody really reaching out to you to help you. And like you said, it depresses me more and makes me more sad that where are we heading towards? Who's going to be there for us in the near future if this is the situation? And I've lived in USA as well. I did not feel that. Like if I would randomly go for grocery or something, and I just say, "Yeah, I'm just doing," they would go out of the way and say, "Why? What's wrong? Are you having a bad day?" And I said, "No, just depressed. It's raining. I'm depressed." And they go, "Oh, why don't you get some ice cream or something?" I think, "Yeah, well, that's a good idea. I just go bring more ice cream and fill up my cart or something." So I really didn't struggle that much over there than where I am right now. I'm right now in Pakistan. I struggle a lot, and it's not like people don't know here. There is bunch of awareness that has been brought forward through universities and of course media, but I just don't see that. And just like a month, 2 months ago, somebody um, in my neighbor, and the mom was devastated, and I was so hurt. And I was like, she's just in my neighbor. I never even talked to her. I never even reached out to her once and said hi, life, and I just felt so sad. We're so, like you said, so busy in our own world that we forget to ask someone, or smile at someone, because a smile can go a long way. That's what I've learned.
Definitely, definitely.
So
Yeah,
since you've had
I
so
agree.
much of experience, I want you, since we're short on time, I know you have to go somewhere. I want you to really tell people out there, give us message of what you went through and what your advice is. We're suffering from it, and since it's been 9 months, you've been all better and stuff. What do you really want to say to all of us in that matter?
I think, I've got nothing profound to say. I think a lot of it is just the basics. Like, we live in a world where we can talk to 100 people that day, but we don't know what's going on with the majority of them. And sometimes the people like who we are surrounded with the most, they could be in the most absurd amount of pain, but because we don't have the time of day to give to them, they're suffering on their own. I think in my experience, what I realized was, from a young age, we're told not to think about our emotions. So, when I was younger, it's like, oh, don't cry. The aunties are here. When you're in school, don't be angry. You're in school. When you go to college or university, it's like, don't show emotions. So I think, as since we've been kids, we've been told our emotions are not that important, but they are what literally make us or break us. So for me, I spent 10 months in a psychiatric unit. What did I learn? I learned how to laugh again. I learned how to dance again. Like, I learned so much in there. And it wasn't because anybody was teaching me. It was because I had the privilege of being surrounded with people who were having psychotic episodes or whatever was going on. But do you know what? They were themselves. I've never been anywhere like it. It it was like living in this bubble. Everybody was themselves, and people think psychiatric units are full of crazy people. Don't get me wrong, some people are like really unwell, but the majority of the people on the ward were just hurting people, broken people, traumatized people, and the ones that were the happiest on the wards were the ones that would, we had one woman who'd walk around in a wedding dress. We had another one who used to kind of sing to herself all the time, walking up and down the corridor. Another one used to just throw paint in her hair. Don't get me wrong, these people are unwell because those things are not what we'd class as normal. But the point is, they were happy. And I remember being on that ward, and I think I'd been there for maybe 6 or 7 months now. And suddenly I realized, Zoe, you've never been happy. You've never been happy because you're never allowed to be happy. But these people who people would call crazy and these people that are locked up, they are so full of joy. It was just amazing. But that's because they're not living in a way in which they
We're
give a
conditioned.
toss about what the world thinks. If they want to wear a wedding dress, she should wear it. If somebody wants to dye her hair pink and green, she'd do it. There was no sense of, what are people going to think? And I think, especially as, we get older, especially females as well, it's all about how are people going to think about you? How will you be perceived? Always living for other people. What I'm learning to do now is not give a shit about what other people think, because all that did for me was make me a puppet. I was dancing for everybody, doing what they wanted, talking like they wanted me to, wearing what they thought was appropriate. Um, but now I've just reached a place where have I found happiness and peace? The answer is no. But I'm on this journey and I'm rediscovering who I am. And I think what's sad is, of course, I've had trauma, stuff that I'm not nowhere near ready to talk about, but I've experienced like some really bad traumatic events. Um, and I think the problem was, especially here in the UK, we're not good at dealing with trauma. We're not like the US where, you know, having a therapist is so common. In the UK, having a therapist is just, it's almost worse than saying you're an alcoholic. It's just no one says I've got a therapist. No, we're not encouraged to talk at all. We're encouraged just to go back to our little houses and sit there in silence and behave. Um, but I mean, everywhere I go, some people think I'm super crazy, but I'm like, when they ask about you, I always say, so yes, at one point last year, I was on a psychiatric unit, and half of them want to run away. You look at them, and they suddenly clutch their handbag, and I'm like, oh, for God's sake, I don't want your money. But I understand why they're doing it. But the more I use the words, psychiatric unit, the more I talk about suicide and self-harm and trauma and rape and abuse and all this stuff, the more I'm trying to normalize it for people that I'm surrounded with. Because they were all words that I never used. Even when I was in hospital, I refused to say I was attempting suicide. I just couldn't say the word. It was more like, oh, I'm not doing too well. But it was like, no, Zoe, like, what do you mean you're not doing too well? You are really, really unwell. And you talking about suicide is not a bad thing. And I think it is very unfortunate that in 2020, we have to explain to our generation and the younger generation that the word suicide is not a bad word. I mean, suicide kills so many people, but we don't use the word. It's like cancer. If someone's got cancer, you're not going to go around saying, I'm sick, I'm not feeling well. No, you've got cancer. And I think the problem with mental health is mental health takes thousands of lives each year, each day. I mean, I don't know the numbers, but I think it's one in every 42 seconds, someone kills themselves in the world. And I'm like, why is that not a pandemic? Like, why is there no? I just don't understand it. If it was any other illness, like I said, even coronavirus, cancer, whatever it is, like the UN, the World Health Organization, governments that gather together to come up with a plan. But with suicide, I mean, I can't speak for other parts of the world, but I know in this country, we are not good at preventing it. Like, no way. And what's shocking is that well, it's not really shocking, but it's in this country, it's mainly males. Um, it's a lot of men kill themselves in the UK. But again, look at how we treat our men. We kind of when they were like little children, like, oh no, you're a big boy now, don't cry. We're already
Mhm.
teaching them. We're already teaching them crying is a weakness. Then we say, oh, you're a big boy now, don't scream and shout. But it's like, it doesn't matter how old they are, they're still human. And what we've done is raise a generation where we were not able to use our emotions. So when we get older and we become independent, those emotions come and we're like, oh my God, it's a bad thing. I don't want it. And I mean, the only way I can explain it further is if you bring up a child saying, you've been naughty, I'm going to call the police. That child, if they see the police on the street, they're not going to think there's somebody to protect us. They're going to think, oh my gosh, there's the police who looks for naughty people. Like we just to be something that we're not. So I think my advice is all of that, obviously. But in a nutshell, it is to just go back to the place where you do what you want to do, you be who you want to be, and stop looking for acceptance because one person might accept you wearing a blue shirt, the other one's going to hate it. It's absolutely impossible. And also, do you know what the most important thing may be? Deal with your trauma, deal with your shit. Because I was the kind of person, I love traveling, travel like so many places. But I always went traveling because I wanted to escape my trauma. But guess what? When I was in Ghana, I woke up and my trauma was there. When I was in Thailand, I woke up, my trauma was there. When I went swimming in the sea, my trauma was there. When I went to bed, like the trauma is with you wherever you go. So you can go on as many holidays as you want. You can buy the biggest house, you can make £1 million a year, but those things are going to mean nothing until you deal with your trauma. And when I say deal with trauma, it doesn't mean you have to get therapy straight away. It means you mourn that loss. So if you want to cry, you cry. If you want to break something, as long as it's not expensive, like break it. It's and I'm going through that phase. There's some days where I like my heart feels broken and I'm like, I need to cry. My first reaction is no, 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 we're not doing that. But now I'm learning. Do you know what? If I want to cry, I've got the right to cry. Like, why am I allowed to be happy but not allowed to be sad when all emotions are valid? And that's something that I'm learning, through my therapy. And is it easy? The answer is no. Nobody wants to sit on their own and let their mind go back to that painful event because it's going to bring out raw emotions. But that's part of healing. It's like I'm getting so sick and tired of running from my trauma, like so sick of it, that now, with my therapist, obviously, I'm working on like when that memory comes, I don't go, no, stop, go away. I think, okay, let it come. I let it just take over my body. Um, and I just listen to it. And I think that's the thing. All of us have an inner child, and that child that was, hurt or broken as a child or teenager, like she's still there. And the thing is, she needs to be healed. Otherwise, we're always going to go around looking for happiness and, never find it. So, in a nutshell, my advice is deal with your trauma, stop running away from it, because until you deal with it, nothing in life will be like feeling like some ceiling. It just won't be content. Life won't be content. And that's a terrible, terrible way to live. Terrible way to live.
I totally resonate with what you're saying because after losing my daughter, my thing was I have to be okay because I had a little one who was just 2.5,
Mm.
and I need to pull myself together because I can't cry all the time. And my husband had to work, and he used to come late, and I don't think I grieved. Uh,
That's it.
I just said, okay, that was God's plan, which it was, but it's okay. And then when I was pregnant with my son, oh my goodness, I don't know what was going on with me. I was going crazy. And in the back of the mind, it kept on coming that I've lost a daughter and I haven't healed, and I need, but just kept putting it down, you know. And right now, I think, like you said, if you want to cry, cry. It doesn't matter. And I know people told me that get over it. She was just 6 days old. I've lost a child who was 10 years old or 20 years old. And I felt that I was grieving or I was being ungrateful. But now I feel that it's okay. It doesn't matter because I need to heal, like you said. And I feel like you were saying, I am now in a happy place because I'm addressing that. And like you said, I cry when I need to cry as many times.
Good for
And
you.
I let my daughter see it. I let my son see it. They come, they hug me, they say, Mom, what's wrong? And I say, I'm just sad. And they say, why? And I say, I don't know. Because I don't want to hide more from them. I want them to know that it's okay, that you're sad. And my daughter cries sometimes, and she comes to me and she's crying. And my first reaction is, what's wrong? What happened to you? And I do get frustrated that there has to be something that wasn't. She said, Mom, I don't know. I'm just sad today. Nothing happened. You didn't say anything. Nobody said something. I'm just sad. So I just said, you can sit with me and cry. And she says, no, I want to be alone. So she goes, she cries it down. She comes and she is such a different and good person after that. Like that whole build-up has probably been having over the week and stuff where she's been, throwing fits or tantrums. She is much better when she cries it out. Sometimes she talks about it, sometimes she doesn't. Sometimes she doesn't know what's going on, and she just wants to cry. So I totally agree with you that if you're anxious, say about it. With this coronavirus, I've been crazy. I've been over sanitizing, and I've heard it left and right. Are you crazy? You blocked yourself in the house, and it just made me more anxious because I thought I was doing something wrong. I don't get out. I need some sun. I need to get. And I felt that if I go out, I would harm someone, and someone would harm me because either I will get the virus, or if I'm a carrier, I'll give it to someone. And I couldn't. Every time I thought about it, I couldn't deal with it. So I was like, if somebody could just say, it's okay if you don't want to go out. It's okay if you've not gone out for so many months, And like you said, one day I just woke up and I said, hell with everybody, I'm going to do what makes me happy because I come first. And that has helped me come such a long way as a person, not just for my depression and anxiety, or looking at my faults where I couldn't see them before. So it's truly been, like you said, I've just rediscovered myself. So yeah, that's about it.
I think what you
Anybody?
just said is like really, really, really powerful because, like we can I think kids know when something's not right anyway. But I think if we teach them from a young age, don't be scared when someone's crying. Cry, let it out. I mean, even if you look at the scientific evidence, crying is so good for our body. It literally, there's tons of research done that says it literally releases those negative chemicals. So I know sometimes when I feel so crap, I've had stress for days and days and I cry and suddenly I'm like, oh. But it's like, why did I spend so many days avoiding crying? I would never avoid laughing. If I wanted to laugh, I'd laugh. And I think that's the thing. Our emotions, especially the difficult ones, they are very valid. And the more we kind of validate those feelings ourselves, firstly, then the more it will become easier to do. And the thing is, I honestly believe the best thing you can give to your loved ones is a better you. I always think I'm going to buy my family a house and I'm going to get them this, I'm going to buy them that. But I realized, you know what, like all of that stuff is not gonna, it means nothing if I'm unwell. Like if I'm struggling mentally and they're worried about me, it means nothing. They don't want stuff from me. What they want is a healthy me. So, me now trying to live in a way which some days I can't fight for myself. I'm like, I don't give a shit about me. But other days I think, do you know what? Like I've got a team of people who've invested in me, who care for me, who love me. Let me today fight for them. So I think as long as you kind of focus on you first, that's the most important thing. I mean, that's why on the planes they say before you put on the oxygen mask for your child or anybody else, put it on you. And the reason they say that is because if you put it on the child and don't put it on yourself, you're going to be useless to that child. Like, what are you going to do? But if you quickly equip yourself, you then look after that child long term. So I think it's very, very, very similar. Looking after yourself isn't a luxury. It's not selfish, which is what we're taught. It's literally the best gift you can give to people you love, because then they get the best version of you. So yeah, but honestly, I think you're doing amazing. I think you're just doing
Thank you.
amazingly, amazingly well. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much coming on board
No, you're
and
absolutely welcome. Absolutely welcome.
and sharing and giving me so much information and so many people out. It means a lot. And I wish you all the best. And I hope we stay connected after
We
this
will.
session as
We'll
well.
definitely. We will.
Thank
All right,
you.
you take care, my darling. Take care. Bye.